job of getting us out of the area, I'll tell you that.
They very seldom hurt people. I mean, that's a rare thing. And those who have had a really negative thing, for the most part, have been hunters with guns going after them. Normally, they simply try to scare you away if you get too close to them, and they do that by throwing stones, not to hit you. They usually go around you or close to you, but they don't hit you. They will use their enormous volume to scare you away with their noise. They'll shake trees. They'll do anything to make you go away. But it's a very rare thing where they would actually hurt somebody.
I agree with you. How about where people have claimed they've been out in the woods? And I had one guest on my show here back maybe 6-7 months ago, claims that he was seeing trees, big trees, uprooted and then stuck back in the ground the opposite direction. So the roots were facing up towards the sky. The top of the tree was put back in with a hole where the tree was. And there was a bunch of them like that. And I've heard it from other people.
And they're very strong and very big, and they very easily could do that. They're certainly known for taking trees and bending them, especially not skinny saplings, but, a little bit thicker than saplings. And they will take those and make arches out of them. They will break off branches that no human could break off. So there is a tremendous power that these creatures have.
Well, I can tell you that because that one, when it chased us when we were getting back to the car, it was taking about a 4 or 5 inch tree and bending it over like it was nothing. And I tell you, that scared me all the more. I'll tell you that.
And like I said, that's over and over again. They will use scare tactics because basically they don't want to be bothered. And if they do interact with people, it's because they've chosen to.
Now, do you think the Earth changes that's going on, the magnetic field, it's drifting, the temperature change, our weather change patterns going on? Do you think that's going to maybe where we're going to start seeing more of these cryptic creatures maybe coming towards humans?
I don't know if the Earth changes are going to make something like that happen. I think we're getting more and more reports about Bigfoot because we humans keep expanding, and so the area that they live in is being greatly reduced. I think that's a major reason why there are more reports. Of course, there's others, these shows that on TV where they're chasing down Bigfoot, and I don't like the premise of those shows, but it's making people more aware of and more curious about Bigfoot. So people are, being more alert when they're out there in the woods because of things they've seen on TV. I think those would be the two major reasons.
I don't know. I can't believe a group of people for cable channel would go out there with like 13, 14 people, carrying the lights, carrying the cameras, doing all this stuff and expect to see anything. It's not going to happen. But I guess it's entertainment, isn't it?
I have to guess that that's what it is. Oh, and another cute story that happened here in North Carolina last January, and this did make the national news, I believe. It certainly made it here in North Carolina. There was this little boy, Casey Hathaway, and he was 3 years old, and he was missing for 3 days and 2 nights in the January cold weather. And when they found him, he was fine, but he was tangled in like a briar, and he couldn't get out. He said that he was, he said a bear took care of him. Now, that time of year, the bears are in hibernation. That's number one. Number two, I checked with a bear researcher from the University of Montana. He said bears never act that way, would never do that. And then I checked the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization and found out there were Bigfoot reports from all the counties surrounding that area where the little boy was found. So it's my conclusion that it was a Bigfoot that was trying to help this little 3-year-old who, after 3 days and 2 nights in January weather, was fine, and he wasn't dressed with heavy clothes on. So his bear story just might very well be the Bigfoot.
I would think it was a Bigfoot. I remember the story. I would think if it was bears, they would have, had a delicacy and ate them. I really think it was a Bigfoot that protected him against the elements.
That's my conclusion.
Now, I don't think a bear would, even a mother bear would have the, the motherhood to try to take care of a human baby or a young kid. It just wouldn't happen.
Well, that's why I checked and found out this bear researcher said it would never happen to, and so he's been, he's been studying them and has a degree on it and probably teaches it. So I'll take his word for it that he wouldn't expect them to behave that way.
Yeah. Now, James, you have a question.
Well, I was just going to say, too, that bears, even if it was before the hibernation, they're going to eat all they can to fatten up. And then if they're coming out of hibernation, they're going to eat all they can because they're hungry. So
because
I definitely don't
starving, think right?
So it's definitely not a bear.
I think
but I did want to go ahead.
As far as saving people, I do have one story which isn't my research. There was a man who he is an author and a researcher, and I think he teaches at a college. And he was doing research into the Civil War. He was able to get a letter by a Civil War soldier that was written in the old ink style and the old writing style on old paper, and it looked to be quite authentic. And this man had written this long, long letter as a legacy to his family, letting him know about his experiences in the Civil War. Well, the part that's fascinating, and there's no way I can tell this well, it's much better when you read it in the book. He basically was essentially mortally wounded and was dying on the battlefield. And after the battle, he said these forest people came and took him into a cave. Now, at that time, during the Civil War, the term Bigfoot and Sasquatch did not exist. So he called them these forest people. And they dragged him into their cave. It was a small clan of Bigfoot that took care of him. He was in and out of consciousness for quite some time. One of the female Bigfoot came in, and she had leaves or some kind of, I assume it was an herb, that she was chewing, and then she would use it like a poultice on his wounds, which seemed to help heal it. And because he couldn't move, he had kind of stunk up his part of the cave. And so one day one of the Bigfoot came in with white powder and spread it over that area. And in his letter he said he was surprised that these forest people knew about lime and how lime is used to kill odors. And when he started to get a little bit better, one of the male Bigfoot came and helped him get up and helped him get his balance. And then he used, there were roots coming down from the top of the cave, and he used those to balance himself when he was trying to learn how to walk again. And eventually, when he was good enough to get back to his people, they took him out of the cave and they pointed him on a path in the direction of where his people were. And as he was leaving, he saw all of those Bigfoot walking off in a line, I guess, off to someplace else, probably to evacuate a very smelly cave. But anyhow, it's written very well. It rings true, and it's just an interesting story that I just decided to include in the book.
How long did it take you to write the book, Mary?
There's no way I can tell you that, because so much of the work was done over a 10-year period when I didn't know I was doing a book, when I was simply writing for the website. And then one day when I realized how much I really had and how nobody else was talking about these things, that's when I did the book, and that part went fairly fast.
Interesting. Now, where is it available at?
Amazon is where people can get it nationally.
Okay. And
now on the website, if you go to skyshipsovercashers.com and open up Editor's Corner, you can find out how to get it through an independent bookstore, because some people prefer to do that. But I can't rattle that off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, and again, too, your website is so rich between Bigfoot, UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, Earth changes, all kinds of stuff. I mean, you could get on your website and be there for weekends. I tell you, a lot of weekends, just going over all the past, stories you have and reports and all that stuff.
You and I have talked about other subjects before, many of them actually. And one that I just posted recently on the website is one of the few that we have that goes in a category called Deep Throat Testimonies. And it's when I'm able to get stories from people who are in positions where they clearly can identify themselves for their own, usually for their own jobs. And this is the part I wanted to share with you. There was this one person who, I'm going to quote the person who I interviewed, and this is the quote. "Not long after I started my job, I met an astrophysicist who worked at NASA. He talked many times before I dared to ask him about his thoughts on the 12th planet, or Planet X. He looked at me very seriously, and I thought he was going to give me that 'you're crazy' look. Instead, he said," and then he made sure he was quoting him, he said, "This planet you're talking about, I've seen it." And then the witness says, he said that he and his NASA co-workers did not think it was actually a planet, but more like a spaceship. And it was staying below the horizon in the southern hemisphere, so people couldn't see it unless they were close to the South Pole. And he said that they thought it wasn't a planet because it would appear and disappear, and they had trouble keeping track of it. It didn't keep a pattern like a planet. And I found that very interesting, coming from an astrophysicist from the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
Oh, yeah. It kind of scares me about, some of these things. If that does exist, could that be a life-ending endeavor to our planet down the road?
Well, the person I talked to said that this man within NASA said, quote, "Just enjoy the time that you have on Earth. Don't worry about these things." And that was the end of the quote. And the person that I interviewed said this sounded rather ominous to me, because everything I'd read in Sitchkin's book said whatever this thing is, it wreaks havoc on the Earth and also seems to have some sort of spiritual connection according to various ancient spiritual texts. Perhaps more ominously, the 12th planet has a pattern spanning millennia of causing chaos whenever it passes near Earth. And, it's clearly something going on down there. There's photos that are taken from the South Pole that will sometimes show what looks to be two suns. Just a few years back, we had all sorts of well-known leaders from around the world that were trekking down to Antarctica. There's just so much going on down there. It's just, you could spend hours on it.
I know. It's a lot of weird things. James, who does our news here at the top of the hour, found some pictures on Google that showed in Antarctica a staircase and some pillars that is now kind of thawing out, which I got to check and see if it's still there. It's some weird things that are popping up.
As far as the website, skyshipsovercashers.com, on the homepage there's a search bar. If you just type in Antarctica, you can get to some of those stories rather easily. It's a Google search, so there's some limitations to it. Or you can go straight to a section on the homepage called Global Links, and there's over a couple years now we've done stories on Antarctica.
Well, our time is up, Mary. Again, the name of the book
is Bigfoot Beyond the Footprints.
And it can be found on Amazon. And while you're there looking at that book, you might want to take a look at Cherokee little people, and you